Hey, welcome to Luca Talks Sports, part of the Sports Talk Line network where we talk sports 24/7, 365. As always, I'm your host, Luca DeAngelis. And for today's episode, which is episode 4, I'm going to be joined by Anthony Farris. So Anthony, we've been working on getting him on for the last couple of months, even before my first ever episode. He's now like an author at OutKick.com. I met him through FanSided because I work for FanSided like him. He was doing Cleveland's basketball and football blogs, so King James Gospel and Dawg Pound Daily. Anthony's a really interesting guest to have. He actually started off when he was much younger, 22, 23 years old, doing television sports reporting and freelance. Like he was an anchor in like a small Ohio market. So he's got some really interesting stories from starting in sports media from a young age. And yeah, he's been doing freelance sports writing as of more recently. So yeah, he knows his stuff. He's very passionate football and basketball fan. And yeah, I'm excited to have him on. So on the show, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns, the season they've had, how they're going to be going moving forward. The Cleveland Cavaliers, just a bit of a season in review and, talking about who they might take at number 3 in the draft. And we're also going to touch upon the NBA playoffs as well. So, yeah, it's going to be an awesome episode. And as always, if you like what you hear at any point, feel free to leave a comment, subscribe, like the video. Yeah, it means a lot to have anybody's support. So without further ado, let's get Anthony on the show. Hey, welcome to the show, Anthony. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So just to tell the viewers a bit of backstory, we originally had today scheduled for the show, but other guests had to cancel, so we thought we were going to move you around to mid-July, and it was all over the place, but you ended up getting your original slot back in the end.
Yeah, it worked out okay. I mean, I know sometimes these things are crazy, and just the time difference between you and I kind of played a factor, but it worked out, and we actually ended up with the original time slot that we had planned probably, 2-3 weeks ago, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, man. So Anthony reached out to me when I was looking for some guests and showed me some of his work. So he was with FanSided for, I think, King James Gospel's the Cleveland Cavs one.
Yep.
And is it Dawg Pound Daily is the Browns one?
Dawg Pound Daily is for the Cleveland Browns.
That's right. And I really enjoyed some of his articles, really well written pieces. And yeah, I love that you're on brand with that Ohio t-shirt. So could you show the viewers what you're wearing?
I can, even though I'm wearing a Washington Bullets hat, but that's more for the look. The Ohio over everything shirt. So I've been an Ohio resident, born and raised, so been here my whole life, and proud to do so.
Yeah, and you were telling me offline, you've got a really interesting background. So I mean, how did you get into creating like all this sports content that you do now?
Sure, thank you. It's been different. It's been a journey to say the least. So when I was fresh out of college, I don't know, probably 22, 23 years old, I got a gig as a sports reporter / sports anchor for a local television station. It wasn't a big market as far as viewership or anything like that, but that's kind of where I got my start. I was part-time, so kind of where I'm located was fortunately the station I worked for was right in my hometown, and they're actually situated between Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Cleveland, Ohio, literally halfway.
Oh, damn.
So I had the opportunity as like I said, a 22, 23-year-old kid to go and interview Cleveland Browns, Cleveland Indians, Cavaliers, Pittsburgh Steelers, a lot of different players and coaches and management and things like that. So I did that, but I was kind of stuck part-time, and looking down the line, I realized that just because of the way that the structure was, I would kind of always be part-time. So I wanted to stick with sports, and an opportunity arose, and I actually worked for an arena football team after
Oh, damn.
that. Which is indoor football, if people aren't familiar with that, indoor American football. So I was with them for a few years, and it was awesome. I handled media relations for them, so that's things like press releases, media guides, setting up player interviews, different things like that. But I also did the color commentary on radio for all our games, We played 16 games a year. I traveled with the team, all that good stuff. And then when I wasn't doing that, then I coordinated player appearances, cheerleader appearances, things like that. So stuck in sports, and then unfortunately, as much as I like the job, the league itself folded. So I was stuck without a job. So from there, I like a lot of people, ended up in a sales role and have had just a couple different sales jobs probably in the last, 10, 12 years since that happened. But on the side, I've done some freelance writing and a little bit of media work for various sites, throughout that time. Most recently, and the way that you and I connected, was through FanSided, where, as you mentioned, I started contributing to King James Gospel, which is a Cleveland Cavaliers-based website, and also Dawg Pound Daily, which is a Cleveland Browns website, and they were both awesome. They still are awesome. They have unbelievable content, really good writers, especially for an Ohio person like myself. They just push out tons and tons of great content day after day, so it really appealed to me. It gave me a platform to kind of get my stuff out there, and then as of recently, it's probably only been, I'd say, a month, my work at FanSided and some other contributions I've made throughout the years just to different sites led me to a recent gig with OutKick. So I've begun contributing to OutKick, which I absolutely love. For those that aren't familiar, it's an awesome brand. I'm not limited to just one sport or one team. I mainly, and we as a site and as a whole, touch on all sports. We'll dabble with a little bit of politics, a little bit of entertainment. So kind of cover all the bases, which is awesome because you're not locked into one subject.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That's my long-winded answer.
No, that's awesome. Having that freedom as a writer is what you want.
Yeah.
It's
great.
It's awesome that not many people could have had that start at 22, 23 years old. Most people are finishing up their college degrees, and here you are working in sports media, which is unreal. And you said you got to interview Browns and Steelers players. Did you have any interesting interviews or interesting stories come out of that?
I did. The most interesting actually wasn't a Brown or a Steeler, but believe it or not, I had the opportunity to interview Mike Tyson. And everybody knows Mike Tyson, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't awestruck. He was in town, oddly enough, this had to be, I don't know how many years ago it was, but he promoted this exhibition tour that he was going to do, where they were going to fight 3-4 rounds in various cities. Well, Mike happened to come to Youngstown, Ohio, where I'm based, as his first fight. That's where he was kicking off the tour. And I was working for a news station at the time and had the opportunity to interview him. And I can remember some of the other media members at the time said, they thought it was a joke. They didn't even want to be there and cover it. And I'm like, this is Mike Tyson. I can't wait to be here. I was so excited.
Absolutely.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I sat front row at the press conference directly across from Mike, because when else are you going to get this opportunity?
Yeah.
And like I said, all these other guys were like, who cares? He's washed up. He's a has-been. I'm like, it's Mike Tyson, So it was awesome. And he was a super personable guy. I remember I had the opportunity to shake his hand and kind of backtracking a little bit when I was working for the news station. You had the opportunity to meet these pro athletes on a weekly basis. And I was never starstruck, but I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit when I saw Tyson. Shook my hand, super nice guy, asked a few questions. He was polite. He's a short guy, which was crazy to me because I'm not a big guy either, but he seemed much shorter than I think he's listed at 5'10" or 5'11", and I think that might actually be generous.
Okay, yeah.
He was built like a house, wide as could be. I still remember that his handshake was as firm as I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it ended up, I believe that he fought one fight on that exhibition tour, which happened to be in Youngstown, Ohio, and that was it. And then the tour, for whatever reason, never took off. But it was awesome. So that was kind of the best experience I had with that. Like I said, I met a handful of Cleveland Indians, Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Pirates, a bunch of at that time Jim Tressel was coaching Ohio State, their football team, and they were pretty successful at the time, so they had a nice run and met a lot of guys there. So I had a lot of really, really cool opportunities, But the funny thing, Luca, is, when you kind of get out of that media field like I did for a few years there, and as I mentioned, I got into sales. Once you're out, it's super tough to get back in. So that's what I tried doing, and again, started up, like I mentioned, maybe 5-6 years ago with contributing to different websites and stuff like that, because once it's a funny world. Once you get into that, sports media landscape, that door opens and then it closes just as quick as it opens if you're out. It wasn't my choice to leave. Like I said, the arena team I was working for was shuttered, and unfortunately I kind of shifted gears, but I'm back in now and excited about it.
Yeah, you had to do what you had to do. And I mean, there's so many people, like, I guess, chomping at the bit to be in sports media. It's a very competitive field. So it's one that can easily leave you behind. But no, I mean, I would have been starstruck meeting Mike Tyson too. Like, I think he's the GOAT for boxing. I mean, boxing's not it's not my forte. Like, I wouldn't call myself a boxing expert by any means, but from what I've seen, peak Tyson's probably better fighter than anyone else at their peak, I think. He's just...
And if he's not the best fighter, he's without a doubt the most entertaining.
100%.
In November, I think it was, when he fought Roy Jones in exhibition, you better believe I paid the $65 or whatever it was to watch that. I was glued to the TV.
Oh man, it's unbelievable how good shape he's still in as well, like, for that fight. Like
50 plus years of age.
Yeah, no, he's a remarkable athlete. I'm jealous that you had that opportunity.
It was cool, no doubt.
So you were talking about covering a bunch of teams within that market. So you follow football and basketball most predominantly, though. Is that right? They're your passions?
That's right. I would say that's correct.
So I mean, being a Cleveland sports fan, you've had a bit of a mixed year, I'd say. I mean, the Browns are very impressive. They rattled off that. There was a bit of a win streak, wasn't it?
Yeah, they went on a roll that second half of the season. It wasn't like they won 8 straight or anything like that, but I think they might have mixed in only 2 losses over their last 8, and the last loss obviously was in the divisional round of the playoffs against the Chiefs, a game they probably should have won, especially with Mahomes getting knocked out. But as a long-suffering Browns fan, I mean, if you would have told me going into 2020 that, hey, this team is going to have X amount of wins, get to the playoffs, win a playoff game, I mean, I would, first of all, I wouldn't believe you, and second of all, I would take that in a heartbeat. So, I mean, I was beyond pleased, and as a Browns fan, I mean, I love them, but I always have low expectations, and they certainly exceeded them last season.
I mean, yeah, and you had a really good off-season too to build on that. Like, you got Clowney for pretty cheap. I think you guys had arguably, if not the best draft in the NFL, you had a top 3 draft, I think, of any team. Like, every time I look at... So, I'm a Ravens fan. You can see the Lamar Jackson jersey I'm wearing now. I'm happy with our draft. I think we had an awesome draft too. But a sign of a good draft is every time the Browns pick someone, I was just like, damn, I wanted that guy to be with, like, reach us. Like...
Yeah, I was encouraged by that draft. I mean, and the Ravens are a team that Cleveland's still trying to catch. I mean, there was that Monday Night Football thriller.
Oh, that was unbelievable.
Lamar, who knows what he was doing in and out of the bathroom, the locker room, I don't know, but he's phenomenal. And, that Browns defense that I watched every week, as exciting as the Browns were, that defense was just, painful to watch. Lamar picked them apart. Everybody picked them apart. I mean, Chad Henne, the Chiefs' backup.
He did.
My God, he's probably older than me. Ran for a first down on, I think it was 3rd and 15.
Oh, it was a long... It was double digits, and he got it.
Which is shocking. I mean, that's just absolutely shocking. So I think they made a concerted effort to, this offseason, improve the speed of the team, especially defensively. And like you mentioned, Clowney, generate more of a pass rush. They took Newsom, the cornerback, in the first round.
Big fan of Newsom.
JOK, because I'm not going to even try and pronounce
it. I wrote JOK down as well.
Linebacker from Notre Dame. He's, from everything I've read, relatively local and things like that. I mean, one of the main reasons he was a selection was to spy Lamar Jackson. I mean, you're playing him twice a year. The guy's dynamic. So you need those fast linebackers and fast DBs, to try and slow those Ravens down. So I was super encouraged by their offseason. But again, we see this every year. I mean, I try not to get too excited about the draft because how often is it? Probably every year we see a draft and whoever you think is gets the A grade or the
Yep.
B grade. Well, when you look 3 years down the line, it ends up being a C or a D. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, and I mean, you did a lot. I mean, Newsom's going to be big for your secondary, like you said. And you also signed John Johnson, I think, in the offseason as well. Was he from Chicago, the safety?
No, he came from the Rams, actually.
Rams, that's right. I knew he was from I was thinking NFC, but I blanked on the team. But he was one of the highest graded safeties last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was really highly graded. They signed him, I believe, the first day of free agency, and if you believe the GM, which who knows if you could ever believe GMs, but he seemed to say that he was their number one target. They wanted him day one, and they went out and got him, which was encouraging because he's still young, which is important because a lot of times you'll see these big free agent signings, and for instance, look at a guy like J.J. Watt, who's a phenomenal player, but he's certainly on the downside of his career. So even though it's a big name, I personally would rather somebody like a John Johnson who, he's in his early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
So he probably hasn't yet reached the prime of his career, which is awesome.
No, yeah.
So I was glad that they were able to go out and get him. They got Troy Hill as well, also from the Rams, who should either start at corner, maybe initially while Newsom works his way in, or be the nickel corner. So they addressed that secondary, which was, like I said, just tough to watch last year.
Yeah, but I mean,
I was pleased to see that.
And you still got Denzel Ward. I mean, Grady Williams had a bit of a rough rookie year, but he was still a first rounder. Like you've gone such a deep secondary now on paper. When that was the weakness. Like Evan Lamar tore it up, and he didn't have his best passing year last year. And a lot of teams tore it up, even though your run defense is pretty reasonably stout. I mean, you combine that with Odell. If the offense doesn't revolve around him and they run the similar offense to what they ran when he was injured, but have him as the offensive coordinator has him as a piece in it, I think you guys will be that much more deadly because it's clear that he's a talent. It's just when Baker gets tunnel vision with Odell, he's a much worse quarterback for it. Whereas when he was forced to spread it to Landry and your other receivers, he was much better. It was night and day improvement for him.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes. I don't know if it's quite as black and white as everybody tends to see it. For the fact that what people don't understand is, so Baker's entering his 4th year. He's had 3 head coaches and 3 offensive coordinators in that time. Well, it just so happened that when the Browns' offense took off last year, yes, Odell was hurt, but it was also after the bye week, really, when they took off and started winning. A lot has to do with the fact that it seemed like Baker and the offense as a whole finally started to settle in. Again, this is a guy who is in charge of your offense, but he's had 3 different offensive coordinators in as many years. So was he trying to force Odell the ball? Probably. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Odell's spectacular. He himself almost single-handedly won the game against Dallas. I think it might have been week 4 or week 5.
Yeah.
But he threw a touchdown pass to Jarvis Landry.
He's got such a nice throw.
He took a wide receiver reverse, I want to say 54 yards to the house. I mean, the guy's dynamic. I can't blame Baker for trying to force the ball because when the ball's in his hands, good things generally happen. Now, he's got a lot of on and off field drama. I think he just likes attention, but he's a super talent. I think that now that Baker's been in this system for a year, and what's phenomenal and impressive is that the entire Browns coaching staff returns, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah, especially in Cleveland.
The entire staff is back, so there's going to be a lot of continuity, not only with Baker, but the entire offense, the entire team, which should be a huge boost. And I'm personally excited about Odell because the one thing that you saw in that Chiefs playoff loss was and it wasn't even a high-scoring game, but in today's NFL, you need to have speed, okay? And they didn't have any speed without Odell. I mean, Jarvis Landry's a good receiver, but he's not a game breaker. Nick Chubb, I feel like he's a top 3 running back in the NFL. Not necessarily a game breaker either, but you add that Odell element, and that
Yeah, you need that over the top like speed. Like, I mean, we're similarly built in that our running, like we being the Ravens, that our running game is dominant. Lamar's a dynamic runner. I think Dobbins is going to be borderline top 5 running back this year. But we went hard at trying to address wide receiver this offseason because Hollywood Brown's quick, but he was being mismatched as like an outside number 1 kind of guy, and we didn't have, we had Willie Snead and stuff playing key roles, and we just needed more speed as in the wide receiver core. So we've done our best to address that through the draft. You guys didn't have to do that because you've got Odell coming back. It's like better than any draft pick having him come back.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, their offense, like I said, that last half of last season was played really, really well, and I think a huge part of that is the running game. When you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I mean, unbiased, that's, I think, the best backfield in the NFL. So they open things up, and I'm super excited to see what they do with a healthy Beckham.
Yeah, I think so too. And last question on the football. You reckon it's a 2-horse race in our division? You reckon? Because I can't see Pittsburgh or Cincinnati challenging us for the divisional crown next year. I think Pittsburgh are on the downswing, and since he's about a year away, I think.
I would agree with you. Pittsburgh, and they've been a thorn in the side of Cleveland for forever. Certainly since '99 when the Browns returned. As much as I personally dislike the Steelers, I give them credit. That's a super well-run organization. But as a Browns fan, I was happy as hell to see Ben return. Because I think his best years are well behind him. And their offensive line is in flux. I'm not sure they have the playmakers anymore, although I do like Najee Harris, who they drafted as a running back out of Alabama.
Yeah.
But I would agree that I'd probably put Baltimore and Cleveland neck and neck at the top.
Yeah.
Baltimore's dynamic. They have an awesome coach, a great system. I think Pittsburgh is without a doubt third.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati, they have some nice young pieces. I think Joe Burrow is going to be, he's a Pro Bowl type player. I loved what I saw out of him. I think he's phenomenal, but Cincinnati's still a few years away. They added some pieces, but I would agree with you that they still need some work. So, yeah, I think it's a 2-horse race, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the season. It's coming up closer than we think.
Right. Training camp's less than a month away now, so.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna be buying into all the hype. When I hear like a Ravens receiver's caught like 4 touchdowns in a training camp session, I'm gonna think that it's immediately gonna transfer to games.
No, I'm with you. It's fun to get excited, with this time of year.
Yeah. Now speaking of excitement, the Cleveland Cavaliers they moved up in the draft, I believe, to get to that number 3 pick.
They ended up with 3. I think they were projected maybe 5th or 6th, and could have dropped to as low as 9. So yeah, that was surprising because the last 2 years in a row, it's been tough. They've been in the lottery, and I believe it was the 5th pick, either 5th or 6th that they've had the last 2 years in a row. Isaac Okoro and Darius Garland, who ended up, he had a rough rookie year, but he had a really nice sophomore season. Okoro's still young, so we really don't know about him, but I think they can finally have a chance to, hopefully get things rolling again now with this 3rd pick, because this is one of the deeper draft classes we've seen in the last probably 5-6 years. Yeah,
it is. I really like what the Cavaliers are building. Like, I love Colin Sexton. I was actually wrong about him coming out of college. He was more of a scrappy kind of defense first guard. Didn't have that much of like scoring chops. He's turned into a 40% 3-point shooter. Garland, yeah, you're right. He had a rough rookie year, but he looked like a future all-star afterwards. And even Okoro, he had a very, very quiet rookie year, but he had some really big games towards the end of the season. So you've got pieces there, and Jarrett Allen, I really like him. I don't know why Brooklyn traded him. That was just dumb for me. Even at the time. So
I'm sure they could have used them a week ago too against the one.
It would have been the difference. I think they would have, even without Harden was playing with a grade 2 hamstring tear, and without Irving, I think they still beat the Bucks if they just have a competent center.
Oh, I agree, absolutely, without a doubt. And I'm excited what Cleveland's doing. It's been a rough few years since LeBron went west. and left us at the altar for a second time. But it's just been kind of an odd fit as far as the pieces that the team has. So they've had a lot of big guys, and then Garland and Sexton, both super talented, but both are smallish guards.
Yeah.
Somewhat similar to C.J. McCollum and Dame Lillard in Portland, but obviously not as talented, at least not yet. But I think that's kind of what they were shooting for. And I'm with you as far as Sexton. He gets knocked a ton, and recently he's involved in trade rumors as well. But people talk about he doesn't. He's not a big assist guy, so he doesn't get his other teammates involved, which I think is true. And a lot of people think that eventually down the line he'd be a great sixth man on a contending team. But something has to be said for a guy that, I don't know, he's like 21 years old at the oldest, and he's pouring in over 20 points a game. That's incredible. And he shoots a great percentage too.
Yeah.
So I'm fully on the Colin Sexton bandwagon, although I don't know how long he's going to be in Cleveland, because there's rumors floating that with the third pick, I think everybody knows that Cade Cunningham's going to go number 1.
Yeah.
He's probably the safest first-round pick in a couple of years at least. And then most people think that the Rockets will take Evan Mobley from USC at 2, who I'd love to see in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But that opens the door for a Jalen Green or a Jalen Suggs.
Yep.
Another guard. So
it's
drafted guards recently, and you would think that if you bring another one in, somebody's got to go. That may be Sexton, but we'll see what happens. I mean, at the very least, it's a great trade chip. And personally, I wouldn't even mind, maybe seeing number 3 traded for a veteran.
Yeah.
Somebody that can make an impact, but we'll see what happens in another, I think the draft's July 29th.
Yeah, that's right. It's about a month away.
Yeah.
So for the record, I actually have Mobley going at 3 to the Cavs.
I love that.
Which I think is a great, because I actually have Jalen Green graded slightly higher. I do think the Rockets will take one of Green or Mobley, and if they do take Green, who I think actually fits their team really well, perfect for the Cavs, because I think a Mobley-Allen front court can work. Like, Mobley's the pro comp I see for Mobley, and I know this is very high praise, and I'll say he's a poor man's version, but Anthony Davis is a comp I see very consistently. And I mean, if it can even be like 80% of the player that Davis is, you guys are going to hit that pick out of the park. And I mean, look, I love Larry Nance Jr. Like, as a Lakers fan, I'll always have a soft spot for him. Health problems, consistent health problems. And then Kevin Love, who, was a great player. He's over the hill now. So that power forward spot is like up for the taking for like, if there's a talented enough player. And I mean, if you had a starting 5 of Allen, Mobley, Okoro, and then the Sexland backcourt, as it's affectionately called in the media, that's a team that probably is a playing team next year, and maybe from 2023 onwards, it's probably a playoff team. Like, it's a very exciting young team, and I mean, yeah, Cleveland's had some rough years since LeBron abandoned them again, but yeah, you're finally building in the right direction now.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what happens this offseason. I actually did a piece probably a month or so ago on FanSided, King James Gospel, about Love. And it's just time that they just have to go their separate ways. I know it's expensive, but everything in the NBA is expensive at this point. Dan Gilbert, I believe he's the second wealthiest owner in the NBA behind Steve Ballmer from the Clippers. So, and I know salary cap implications get involved, but he's got the money to do it. I mean, we just saw this year Blake Griffin had a huge buyout with Detroit.
Yep.
It's something that happens. At this point, Love, like you said, he was phenomenal in Cleveland's championship run. In that 4 years when they went to the final 4 straight years. But he's injury prone. He clearly doesn't want to be there, which is fine. He doesn't have a good role on this team right now. It's one thing to keep a veteran around that wants to be there and wants to be that influence on the younger players, but he doesn't want to do that, which is fine. I mean, not everybody's built for that. So go your separate ways. I mean, I think it could help Love's career. It just gets that big burden off of the Cavaliers as well, opens up a spot for somebody else. Like you said, Larry Nance, if he can stay healthy. Hopefully somebody like Evan Mobley. But the pieces are there, but I just think they've, living somewhat close to the area for these last few years, it's just been that elephant in the room of Kevin Love just hovering over this franchise. And and everybody's kind of tiptoeing around him. But you just got to go your separate ways for the good of both Love and the organization. And it's time for Cleveland to take that step. Their GM, Kobe Altman, he's made some nice moves, but at the same time, he keeps preaching that it's a rebuild and patience. Well, I don't buy that with patience. I can see for 1 year, but there's examples year after year. Look at the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
Look at the Bucks. Look at the Atlanta Hawks. These teams, they might be down for a year or so, but boom, they're right back in the thick of it. And that's what you have to do. I mean, you don't need a 3 or 4 year rebuild in the NBA. I mean, shoot, 8 teams from each conference get into the postseason. You should be able to do that after a year or two. It's been too long. They need to figure this out. Whether it's through this deep draft or whether it's using those picks to get some other players in, there's talent there without a doubt. And finally, some consistency. They've changed coaches almost as much as the Browns, maybe more. But now that Bickerstaff's returning for a second season, well, it's really 2.5 because he took over partway through the 2020 season. I think that's going to pay dividends. And as a Cavaliers fan, hopefully we'll have something worth watching in the 2021-2022 campaign.
Yeah, I think you will. And I mean, like you said, like teams like the Hawks and Suns are like that blueprint. They have like 4 or 5 bad years, but every year you could see progress. It's not like it was 4 or 5 years of just sucking at that same level. They bottomed out. I think both teams were at the bottom of their respective conferences in like 15, 16, and then every year they built after that. Like, I mean, the Suns got lucky to get number 1 and get Ayton, who, even though not the best player in that class, he fits really well with their team. The Hawks got Trae Young, who looks like it was a steal where he was available, even though they did it via trade. And so, all you need is that little bit of draft lottery luck, I suppose, which you've gotten, and pieces to fall your way. And you can, as long as you build correctly around those big blue chip talents, you should be able to at least be in contention for the playoffs quickly. And then, from there, get that playoff experience and then become a title contender after that. So, no, look, if I was a Cavs fan, I'd feel this year would probably be the first year I'd be starting to feel good about the team since LeBron. So, yeah, plenty of light there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And they're a small market team in the Midwest. You can compare them to a Milwaukee or an Indiana or Detroit even. So you're not going to get free agents, big-time free agents. That's not a destination. I don't care. Every team has the money to offer now. One way or another, even if they don't have one on cap, they're able to trade somebody. All these untradeable contracts we've seen over the last couple of years. Russell Westbrook, John Wall, Chris Paul a few years ago, who was deemed untradeable. I mean, there's a way to move off salary and pay free agents. But if you're, like I said, in Indiana, Detroit, Cleveland, teams like that, it's not a destination. So people aren't coming there unless you're LeBron James, who was born 30 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
So you have to hit on these draft picks. You have to make some aggressive trades, things like that. And I think now's the time that we're, 4 years removed from LeBron heading to the Lakers. It's time to make a move.
Yeah, I think so too. So have you still been following the playoffs, by the way, even though your team's been long gone?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm an avid fan. So yeah, I'm definitely watching. And these Eastern and Western Conference Finals, they've been exciting, but not quite as exciting as the conference semis were. Awesome. I mean, we had a couple of Game 7s. They were great to watch, but it's been entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we speak, the Suns and the Clippers Game 4 is happening. I don't know who's winning because I don't have the score in front of me, but even like the Hawks and the Bucks at 1 apiece now. I mean, the Hawks got eviscerated yesterday, but the fact that they're even in this position, like they've got home court now. Like I'm probably, out of the non-Hawks fans in the world, I probably stand for the Hawks more than most people because, as I mentioned to you off air, like I'm an Oklahoma Sooners fan in college. Trae Young's my favorite player. When my Lakers got eliminated, in the first round, I was like, all right, on the Hawks wagon for these playoffs. So like I've quietly had this belief in them, but even I thought they'd be eliminated by the Sixers in Game 7. Like I even said that on this show. Like they keep exceeding everyone's expectations, and that's what you want to see in playoff basketball. Like you got the Suns, who, they're favoured to make the final, a year removed from not being a playoff team. You've got the Clippers, who, Yeah, since they've lost Kawhi, they've been playing some of their best basketball. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's crazy. It's been something. I'm the same as you. I mean, Trae Young's been phenomenal. I certainly didn't think they were going to win that Game 7 against Philadelphia on the road. And I actually did a piece for OutKick, I think it was earlier today, where Reggie Miller was complimenting him as kind of the NBA's next villain, and sort of took over Reggie Miller for if there's anybody our age,
yeah,
watching this. But he was a guy that thrived being on the road. He was getting booed every arena he went to, but he always performed. And Trae Young has kind of taken over that role. He's exceeded my expectations, that's for sure. Personally, I'm rooting for the Bucks. I mean, I don't have a horse in the race, but if I had to pick, I like the Bucks. I'm a Giannis fan for the fact that he's one of these guys that I don't know how closely you follow him, but he refuses to train with other NBA players in the offseason, at least those that aren't on his team.
Yeah.
Which I love to see. I'm old school that way. He doesn't want to be with the competition. He doesn't want to share secrets, anything like that. I think he actually trained with Kobe. You may know a little more about that than me. Get that Mamba mentality, and you see so much of this in not just the NBA, but all of professional sports now, where everybody's friends.
Yeah, they are.
And like I said, I'm a little more old school. You're not going to hate each other, but I would prefer to kind of go your separate ways, and rather than join super teams and things like that, do what Giannis is doing. Stick where you're at, and you get knocked down, but you get back up and try and beat the team the next year to beat you. So I'm kind of pulling for him, and we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of parity this year, which I think is cool. I mean, the Suns, the Clippers, it'd be nice to see Chris Paul at his old age finally reach the finals and maybe do something there. Like you mentioned, Paul George kind of hearing the team now with Kawhi out, and then of course Giannis and Trae Young. So it's been exciting. I've enjoyed these playoffs.
Yeah, like as a neutral, it's great. I mean, as a Lakers fan, my thing is, like, even though I want the Hawks to win, I'd be content if anyone but the Clippers won, just because you've got the intercity rivalry, I guess. Like Clippers, like I'll make it clear that last year I didn't really respect the Clippers because they were drawing before they'd really done anything. Their results kind of backed that up. But this year, even it's like that Anchorman quote. Like, I don't know if you've seen Anchorman 1, but it's like the rival news network is like, it says, "I hate you, Ron Burgundy, but God damn it, do I respect you." That's me with the Clippers this year. Like, they've earned mine and probably everyone else's respect for how mentally strong they've been after they've had 2-0 deficits in the playoffs. They came back from the first two. I'm not sure they pulled one game back in this series. I don't know what's happening with the game that's currently happening, but if they make it two apiece, I mean, that's some really seriously strong mental fortitude. Like, Paul George has bounced back fantastically. Reggie Jackson, I didn't see him being the contributor that he is. He's been incredible.
Yeah, and the guy that deserves a ton of credit is Ty Lue.
Yeah.
The coach, they were, like you mentioned, they were down in every single series at this point. And he just makes phenomenal adjustments. And we saw that even, he was the coach for Cleveland when the Cavs won in 2016.
Yeah.
And people just rave about the adjustments that he makes. And from having seen it in Cleveland firsthand, he's one of those guys that he's not necessarily concerned about the regular season at all. And then the playoffs get here, he makes, entirely different adjustments than what you saw in the regular season, and he always has his team ready to go, and it seems like no deficit is too big. So I'd be encouraged if I was a Clippers fan. Yeah, I mean, the narrative outside of Cleveland was that Ty Lue was carried by LeBron James as a coach, but it's not the case at all. I think Lue's actually a better coach for the current NBA than Doc Rivers was, and that's no disrespect to Rivers, but Rivers is a bit stubborn with adjustments. It was like a chess match with the Jazz where Gobert, defensive player of the year, phenomenal rim protector. He was unplayable by the end of the series because they ran Marcus Morris at the 5. They benched Zubac, who's a fantastic young player in his own right. And having Gobert forced to switch on the pick and rolls on Paul George and Reggie Jackson, he couldn't. And Terrence Mann was left open for 7 threes in the decider. 7 threes out of 10 he made for 39 points.
Like Gobert was a liability in the pick and roll and is a multi-year defensive player of the year. So, like, I give Lou so much credit for that adjustment, and he's making the same adjustments. In that Phoenix series, like I think that Monty Williams should have won Coach of the Year. But it's both teams. It's like a coaching masterclass. I love watching it.
It really is. Yeah, you're right. And one of the interesting things about Lou that has kind of made the rounds in Ohio is that, and you have to bear with me because that 2016 Cavs victory, that's the only championship that Ohio has had since I think 1954, I believe, or 54. I can't even remember.
Was it the 30s? Whenever the Indians last won. Yeah.
It's incredible. So we carry that to us that happened a week ago. But so we're always ready to talk about it. And just recently, I heard. I always listen to former Cavs Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye do a podcast. It's awesome. It's called Road Tripping. And they didn't pay me to say that. I wish they did. Just as of last week, they were talking again because it was the 5-year anniversary of that title team, and how Game 7, you go into the locker room trailing the Warriors at halftime, and Lou was up in LeBron James's face, calling him out that he's got to step up, be more of a defender, and LeBron James was pissed. He's thinking, who's this guy calling me, the greatest player in the world, calling me out in Game 7, blah, blah, blah. Wouldn't talk to him, but sure enough, LeBron then, he D'd up a little harder, and we saw what happened. Shoot, he had the block.
Yeah, he did.
And all that, but a ton of credit. And there's a million stories you can just Google or see anywhere of all the inspirational things and strategic things that Lou did throughout his time in both Cleveland and LA. So I think he's a phenomenal coach. And like you said, as good as Doc Rivers is and Monty Williams and some of these other guys, I think Lou deserves even more praise than he actually gets.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, no matter what happens to the Clippers this year, I think you got to at least call the year a success. And Ty Lue's a big part of that.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, I think we're going to wrap things up now because I could probably talk for another hour about sports. Like, it's when you get me talking about football or basketball, I mean, yeah, I could ramble forever. It's awesome to have someone on the show who matches me for passion about sports, especially Ohio sports.
Yeah, no, we'll do it again. Hopefully, maybe after one of these Browns-Ravens games, we could talk in a couple of months or sooner or later. And
I'd be down. We could even do a preview as well and some predictions. Like I'd love to do that and have we could both break down our individual sides and I guess keys to the game.
That sounds perfect. Yeah, but if my prediction goes wrong, we gotta scrap the whole thing.
Mine too as well. Like we've got to do some pre-editing, like just so that it makes us sound right. Like if the Ravens end up losing by 20, we'll just have this like poorly edited clip in where I'm like, yeah, the Ravens are going to lose by 20 because of this. Just so that I can save some face.
Well, that's good. We're on the same page then.
Yeah, we've got good editors at Sports Talk Line, so I mean we can make it happen if we give them enough time.
Perfect.
Before I end the show, so I know you said you've got your FanSided stuff. It's OutKick as well, right? So if the viewers want to, I guess, find your writing and your work or engage with you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm not a super active Twitter guy. I have it on Twitter. It's at OhioAF, so that's at OHIOAF.
I love that.
Which is a little play on words and my initials. But so I'm on Twitter daily, constantly. I'm not one of those guys that I won't annoy you on Twitter. So I'm not the guy that live tweets every single game. I personally don't think people care what I eat, so I'm not at a restaurant and taking pictures of my food. I don't share every single thought on Twitter, but what I do is I repost all the articles that I write on OutKick, which is usually probably about 30 or so per week. My FanSided stuff as well, and then I'll also do a lot of retweeting of other articles that other contributors across the globe have put out that I enjoyed. So I'm not going to kill you with a bunch of different stuff on my timeline, but if you want to give me a follow at OhioAF on Twitter, and then of course you can visit OutKick's website, which is OutKick.com. They've got great content. I can't talk highly enough about some of the contributors that they have, so you can find me on either place.
Awesome. And is your FanSided stuff still active as well for people who want to read your old articles?
So if you just KingJamesGospel.com or DawgPoundDaily.com. There's a search on each of them, and just put my name, Anthony Farris. That's Anthony. Last name's Farris, and you can just put me in the search bar and pull up some of my stuff. I think what you'll find with me, I'm not an X's and O's guy.
Yeah.
So I'm more entertainment. I get into these games and things like that, but I'm not going to break down a pick and roll or a play action pass, things like that. Probably the most viewed article that I wrote for Dawg Pound Daily, the Browns site, was just which current Browns could be cast for the HBO series Entourage.
I love that.
I like doing more stuff like that, and that by far got the most views, and I thought that was more fun writing that than talking about, the right guard, how many snaps he played in week 15. So
no, it's
if you
fair.
want that kind of content, then check me out.
I've got to say, was it Baker or Odell get Vinny Chase?
It was Baker was Vinny Chase.
Yep.
We had Odell was, for Entourage fans out there, I had Odell basically name alone as Johnny Drama.
Yep.
Drama surrounds Odell.
Yep.
So I kind of thought that was a good fit. I will say though, the one that I didn't include, that if I had to go back and revisit it, was I would have put Colin Cowherd in there. He kind of would have been the rival agent.
Yep.
Of Ari's. I think Josh Weinstein.
Yes.
Was the rival agent at that point. So I probably would have put him in there at some point. But,
yeah, because of his Baker hate. Yeah.
For those that aren't familiar, he's a radio host that attacks Baker all the time. So I probably would have done that one.
No, I've got to check that article out. I didn't actually see that when I was looking through your stuff. So, no, that's awesome. Thank you for your time, Anthony. It was really awesome having you on this show. And yeah, we definitely have to do it again soon.
Yeah, I had fun. Thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Luca Talks Sports. Yeah, it was even better than I expected. Anthony's, the fact that he even got to meet Mike Tyson through his line of work, it's unbelievable. Like, you can tell that he's very, very passionate about his sports and that he knows his stuff. And it was, the conversation, it flowed so easily. It probably could have gone for 90 minutes and not broken a sweat. So, really glad Anthony came on board, and we're definitely going to try and get him on again soon, maybe for an AFC North preview, or, for Browns-Ravens week for first or second matchup, we might do a preview of the game. Awesome guest to have, and it was really fun recording this week's episode. Now, make sure you tune into Sports Talk Line, not just for my show, but for lots of other great content. I mean, we discussed the NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup finals are about to begin in the NHL, MLB season is well underway. We've got the Euros, and obviously the football season is training camp approaching, so it's a lot closer than you think. And as always, if you like what you heard, please like the video, subscribe, comment, leave your thoughts, just give your feedback. We love to hear from our fans. I've been your host, Luca DeAngelis, and thank you for tuning in.